Hello, I'm Miles, and I'm happy to be back here at X-Raced, where knowledge meets inspiration in the intricate dance of industry evolution. I'll be with someone today who's no stranger to you because he's one of the most trusted voices we've had here on the show. Someone who has spent over 4 decades helping organizations strengthen capability, elevate standards, and turn corporate responsibility into real business performance. At this point, he's not just a returning guest, guys. He's part of the X Ray's DNA. He's a global leader in accelerating continuous improvement, or ACI, and capability development. Today, we're diving into something that sounds big, but is actually very human: social license. Joining us for his 69th appearance here on X Raced is none other than the Managing Director and CEO of ACI Global and e-Quip, Ian Erskine. Hi, Ian.
Welcome, welcome, Miles, and all our viewers. And again, I trust everyone had a wonderful Valentine's weekend. And as Miles and we shared the Andre Rieu's Valentine's podcast, and we both enjoyed it. Yeah, and I look. It was a lovely weekend. We had a lovely weekend, nice
Yeah.
and quiet, and a little bit of gardening and a little bit of painting and everything like that. But no, it's good to be here this morning, Miles. And
I agree.
this is a very, very interesting topic we're discussing this morning.
Mhm. Well, I love that Valentine's podcast. It's great to have you always, Ian. So we hear the term social license quite often, but it can sound abstract or even political when you talk about ACI Global Social License being built on duty of care, principles, values, culture, and cognitive and strategic thinking. What does that actually look like inside an organization on a day-to-day level?
Well, I like to bring it back to the very, very basics, I guess. And I thought about this, and I thought, well, and I often watch some of the Olympic rowing races, and the pairs are the ones that intrigue me. Is that you have two people in the boat, and you can see them start, and the concentration and the cognitive thinking between the two of them, and the bonding, and if you like what that actually is a social license.
Mm-hmm.
And, they put everything they've learned, how they operate, they put all that together and just think how they would be feeling and operating when they get towards the finishing line. They know they're just about there. There's a gold medal at the end of it, right? And and it's almost exactly the same with the employee and the owner of the business. They both have
Mhm,
to be in that frame of mind to be collectively pulling and rowing together to achieve the intended results.
mhm,
Now, whilst they're pulling together and rowing together, they've all got to have that's their own social license based on their values and their principles, primary
mhm,
duty of care, the ability to think through issues, right? And again, take it back to the boat race. If there is a slight slip up by one of them, the other has to compensate to
mhm,
cater for that so that it doesn't distract or impede on the outcome. And exactly the same with the employees working within an organisation together with senior management and the owners of the business.
mhm.
Yes, little things happen now and again. So you have to work together to sort that out. Again, we go back to change, little book who moved my cheese. There's things you have to do slightly differently to
Yeah.
achieve the intended result.
Mhm,
And I also say this quite genuinely, is that if you stop and really think about it, that's the easy thing to do is to achieve the intended result by doing the right thing. It's a
mhm.
bit like being happy or sad. To be sad, you actually have to work at that, or if you're going to be grumpy, that's something you've got to work at. The
Mhm.
natural persona of a person is that booming smile, like yours, right? That booming smile, that is your natural persona of
Yeah.
putting that message out. right? You
Mm-hmm.
don't come to a podcast or you don't walk around the office or go home with a sad face and things like that, because that's just not you,
Right.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's the natural way of doing things. And again, and we'll talk about this a little bit later in the podcast. It's a bit like the difference between right and wrong. We all start off with the premise of, yes, we're going to do it the right way. And that's where you have to concentrate because you have forces pushing you in different sideways, pushing you to cut corners and things like that. But at all times, you need to be able to come back and say, no, we have to stick to the right and proven way that we're going to do this to achieve the right outcome.
Hmm. You know, the analogy that you have about the Olympics or the races, what it reminded me of what I learned from my previous bosses. When people and leadership are rowing in sync, work stops feeling like obligation. It starts feeling like, you know, like a shared purpose. So, building on that, many companies say culture matters, but very few can measure it or turn it into real performance, Ian. How does ACI transform principles and values into real capability, something that strengthens performance, such as future ready leaders, not just reputation?
Yeah, future ready leaders, reputation, and again, doing it once, doing it right. And not so long ago, it was a new organisation I was starting, and anyway, I was giving a bit of an overview of what I was hoping to see at the organisation, and I was talking about TQM, Total Quality Management and intended outcomes. And then all of a sudden, the CEO and basically the owner of the business broke in and he said, okay, I'm just too lazy to have to turn around and fix up issues. I implore to all my staff and employees this attitude of do it once, do it right.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought I hadn't heard that, but it is so true because if you have this philosophy of, oh, anything will do, we'll just rush it out, at the end of the day, you ultimately will be involved in turning around, going back, fixing up issues and correcting them. And again, going back to what we have started to discuss in reference do it once, do it right. And at the end of the day, you can both, the owner of the business and yourself, you can both go home knowing that all your tasks have been fulfilled, not only to the very best of your ability, even more so, right? So that you don't have any issues outlying for you to come back the next day and things like that. And I think that's a very important attitude when we tie that into our own social licenses, for argument's sake. And and I always take people back, always remember your duty of care, because that is one of the key things which I think is missing and
Mm-hmm.
needs to be emphasized. And um, basically, all my clients now realize that when we talk about values and outcomes and how things are done, basically, that's one of the things they're now emphasizing is the duty of care for everyone to
Yeah.
be looking after not just themselves, they have to be looking after each other. And again, that comes back to values.
Yeah.
That comes back to our principles of doing it right and doing it once. And,
Mm-hmm.
and look, we're all human, we all make mistakes, but and sometimes we can't pick it up. We should have the understanding where our fellow employee standing beside us will simply say, okay, that's wrong. Do it the right way. You know,
Mm-hmm.
that's what I'm talking about, a social license which should be operating all the time is and working together. Going back to the Olympics pairs race.
Uh-huh.
If there's a little issue that comes up, a slight slip, the pairing, the other person needs to be able to pick that up
Yeah.
and correct it,
Pivot.
and away they go again. And
Uh-huh.
I've actually seen that in practice, actually, and it was many years ago. There was a pairs race, and ultimately they were going to win.
Mm-hmm.
One of them had a slight miss up. Now, they didn't win, but they still won the silver medal. and they actually talked to them. The reporter spoke to them, and the fellow that made the mistake, he was a little mortified, but he said, I'm so proud to have had paired with Joe because Joe was able to make the correction. Yes, we didn't win the race, but we still won a silver medal. And if it wasn't for Joe, we wouldn't have even won the silver medal. We probably wouldn't have even finished the race.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the camaraderie, social license, and the ability to demonstrate your values and principles matching with your organization's values and principles as well.
And I couldn't agree more because rework is very expensive and sometimes you cannot rework. So I think doing it right for the first time is more than just perfectionism. It's
Yes.
smart leadership. I was watching the Winter Olympics earlier and I was thinking this is such a very, skating more specifically, it's such a hard thing to do and you cannot actually make a mistake. They must be so perfectionist. And you've also long said that investing in people, Ian, is the true accelerator of continuous improvement. How does developing competence and capability in guidance with ISO standards such as ISO 10015 and 10018, development and engagement, actually translate into earning trust from stakeholders and value creation for both the stakeholder and the organization?
Well, see, this is where we as auditors and consultants and the organisation themselves involving people, this is where you take it to the next level. Because to me, there's an overemphasis of organisations becoming certified to a certain management system.
Okay.
What I now say is that's really just the start. But at the very beginning, you've got to have your people's capability, their enthusiasm, their ability to want to do better and want to achieve greater outcomes.
Mhm.
That also needs to be in place. Now, that's where we talk about the development of the people, right? Now, it's interesting, and we're now bringing this in a lot more in reference to our processes, in reference to the second standard, which actually talks about engagement. So if you talk at the very beginning, when we're talking about engagement, we're actually talking about how we communicate between each other.
Mhm.
Now, uh, in within management systems, it's almost just a mundane requirement of each of the standards that you've got to demonstrate you understand communication.
Okay.
Now, what I'm now saying when I'm sitting down with my organisations is this is where you've then got to cut it down and say, well, how do employees engage with the managing director? How does the managing director engage with the employees?
Right.
And quite often, I'll sit down with everyone and I'll just mention to them that, when you get up and go home, you always say goodbye to your fellow employee and things like that. And I often now say, well, don't forget, go and knock on your managing director or the owner of the business's door, right? And wish him a good evening and thank
Mhm.
him for everything and make sure that he's fine as well. Because too often, as employees, and I've seen it too often, they'll all pack up and go home,
Yeah.
and the director or the senior manager's left there mulling away and cleaning everything up. And we're all in this together. We're all people. We're
Mm-hmm.
all one of the same. We all have our way of improving enthusiasm and improving our performances, and it's part of a team effort.
Uh-huh.
And that's where these two standards come in very well, where we talk about the development, but you can't have development unless you have engagement. They work
Mhm.
hand in hand, and it's a very important part of the ACI global certification process, where that now nuts in very well with our ISO personal certification and personal recertification. And take it further, it then morphs across and enables the organisation to demonstrate that they have a system that is certifiable, obviously by a third party. But that's where all this comes in
Mhm.
and gives you that framework, and we'll actually start to talk about this improvement framework within a business
Mm-hmm.
at our next episode, right?
Okay.
And then we're actually then going to go back and look at that framework for people, because
Mm-hmm.
it's very important that the organisation puts that framework in to ensure capability, to ensure
Mm-hmm.
the skills and the tasks are not only achieved, but there's ongoing accelerating continuous improvement of those tasks being achieved. But on top of that, there has to be the oversight, the verification that those tasks are being completed in a set, routine, um, competent, and capable manner so that
Mm-hmm.
mistakes aren't made.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure about that as well, because when people feel invested in and recognized, performance improves naturally and trust follows. And what role does future ready leaders play in sustaining a social license, Ian? And what are the high achievers doing differently when it comes to people engagement and corporate social responsibility or CSR?
Yeah, well, this is where, again, this is where we talk about being future ready leadership. And above all, this is where we must address this within an organisation, is we have to cater for aspiration. If we
Mm-hmm.
don't cater for aspiration, people tend to become a little bit bogged down in their mundane, routine roles and tasks. Now, if we continually bring this up and discuss this within the workforce, each other's aspirations, this is where you really bring the best out of everyone, including the owner of the business or the directors.
Right.
Because if the directors and the owners of the business can see, wow, look at how these guys are operating, they're wanting to step up, they're wanting to step up into senior management roles, they're wanting to move up. We've even got one of our employees wanting to go and run his own business. And
Mm-hmm.
I say to senior managers and owners, don't be frightened of that, because that can only add in the long run to your business. Because if you have ultimately set the parameters with development and engagement with your employees, where they can then have the confidence to step out and run their own business, even
Mm-hmm.
if it is as a competitor. And that's
Yeah.
all well and good, because then you can actually challenge backwards and forwards between the two of you to even bring greater results for each other to
Mm-hmm.
achieve that. Now, you can't do that unless you do your monitoring and your measuring, right? And you have your frameworks in place to
Mm-hmm.
ensure at every given time during the day, a person is working not only to the very best of his ability, but he's challenging himself to do better, and the business themselves are challenging themselves to do better.
Mm-hmm. It's a domino effect.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. So
Yeah.
it's intentional leadership, not accidental.
No, no. I think that word accidental is sometimes overused. Um, and I often hear, are leaders born? Some people are born as leaders,
Mm-hmm.
but I think leadership is the success story of the development and the engagement of people.
Yeah. Because engagement
And
doesn't happen by chance. It's
no,
designed.
it is. It's designed that way. And if we do it right, you get that accelerating continuous improvement.
Mm-hmm.
You
Mm-hmm.
get that value culture, the value adding,
Yeah.
right? And then I used to hear this word, uh, oh, meritocracy. We shouldn't talk about meritocracy and things like that. Well, I'm
Mm-hmm.
different. That's what we should be talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Because if people are working to the very best of their ability, they're getting accelerating continuous improvement. The results are coming. They're at all times looking for that enthusiasm and be aspired to do better and better.
Mm-hmm.
That's where, yes, you do need to pay people more
Yeah.
because they're worth it.
I agree. And when an organization, Ian, truly aligns its principles, people focus, values, duty of care, and culture with ACI or accelerating continuous improvement, what kind of long term value creation do you see emerge? Not just financially, but in resilience, sustainability, and broader social influence.
Well, it works across the board, and this is where you achieve this through improvement monitoring and measuring. And but there is a way that comes natural, and it comes natural if you encourage aspiration. And again, you tie it back to duty of care, but I think aspiration is the key here. If that is fostered within an organisation, a lot of this will come naturally. And when I often talk about organisations that, okay, show me the framework how this is actually done. And after I've been with that organisation for a number of years, they've worked with their employees together and they've put the frameworks in place, right, where a known process is looked at on a regular basis and it's improved on a regular basis.
Mm-hmm.
So once you're getting your improvement, obviously you need then to be able to measure that,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that's where everything comes together, and not only the employees, but the owners of the business and the directors, they end up that there is nothing that they can then look back and say, wow, if I'd only done that better, I would have been able to achieve a better result because
Uh-huh.
ongoing monitoring, measuring, and doing it that way, if you do it that way, these surprises are dealt with even before they can impact on the result. And I think that's the critical thing where we need to be very aware of and go back and continually look at to make sure everything we do has a people focus.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Now,
Yeah.
some of the things that I'm beginning to see in reference to AI at the moment is a little is more than just a little bit concerning, is that some of the processes are being handed over completely to AI and machines, but there's no human oversight there.
Mm-hmm.
Now, doesn't matter how good a machine is, right? There are times that those machines miss a beat, they
Mm-hmm.
stop.
Stubborn.
Sometimes they break down, right? And it's just not a matter of just switching it, clicking a switch and starting it again.
Mm-hmm.
You just have to just then a human has to go back in and have a look. Wow, okay, so how's that going to affect the ultimate product when it comes out the other end? You know, it could be part of cooking a potato for goodness sake
Yeah.
or a piece of meat on a barbecue. If you run out of gas, right,
Mm-hmm.
then you've got to go and get gas and restart the cooking process. You'll end up with a very tough piece of steak. And I'm just using that as an example where
Yeah.
this points back to where you have to have that part of your process looked at by human oversight.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. And it's so very important. And without a people focus, the values and culture, along with accelerating continuous improvement, duty of care, aspiration,
Mm-hmm.
none of this will happen. This is
Yes.
where I employ businesses just to have a look at their own social license, right?
Mm-hmm.
And put people forefront of that. Okay. Your cognitive thinking, your oversight, duty of care, your values and your principles. And again, it's interesting sometimes when I talk about values and principles, people say, oh, how hard's that to, abide by your values and principles? And I'll often say to people, I say, how many incidents in reference to when you've been driving your motor car, how many
Mm-hmm.
breaches have you, driving fines, accidents and incidents like
Uh-huh.
that? And 99% of the people I speak to, I've never had an accident, never had a driving fine, okay, and things like that. And I say, well, now, why is that? And they say, oh, because I drive within the speed limit. I
Mm-hmm.
maintain my vehicle at all times to make sure it doesn't break down and things like that.
Uh-huh.
And that is what we're talking about. Do it once, do it right, isn't it?
Yeah, I agree. And what a holistic approach, Ian. Aspiration is key indeed. It shows that sustained success is not actually about size, it's about consistency and alignment. So, thank you so much, Ian, for reminding everyone that organizations earn trust through investing in their people, strengthening capability, and aligning leadership with principles and values that guide everyday decisions. And of course, accelerating continuous improvement as ever. Thank you.
Yes. And, just to finish it off, like I said, next week we'll be talking about um, improvement monitoring and measuring.
Mm-hmm.
And if you like, we'll be discussing how to actually put that framework in place.
Yeah.
And it's not a matter of we're putting this part of the process in front of the monitoring and measuring of people and their capability. We're actually going to do that for a deliberate way because we're actually going to bring the engagement of people and how to engage people in this
Mm-hmm.
process. And
Yeah.
that's why next week we'll talk about monitoring and measuring and improvement.
Yes. Looking forward to that. Thank you, Ian.
Thank you. And I hope everyone, well, I know everyone, make sure you have a wonderful week coming up and
Thank you.
plan ahead and make sure, as I say to everyone, make sure you allocate and spend that $86,400, which is
Yeah.
seconds in the day, and because there's no carryover, because
Yes.
you start afresh every day.
Reset.
Yes.
Okay, so folks, if you're looking to strengthen capability, develop future ready leaders, or align your organization with continuous improvement and corporate social responsibility, you can connect with Ian and his team at ACI Global. Go check out the links below. Thanks everyone for sticking with us. See you on our next episode. This has been your host, Miles, with Ian, as usual, reminding you to stay focused, driven, and inspired with X Rays.